And welcome to another episode of the Greater Culture Podcast with our Meet the Member series. And this one is a special one because first coach member on the podcast, John Walker. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Hey, man, pleasure.
I know as someone who consumes a lot of podcasts like I do, and we share some of those ideas, excited to get you on the other side of it and share some of your perspective. But love for folks to get to know you a little bit more. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a Texas native, got 2 kids, 10 next year, or in January, a 7-year-old, and moved here during the pandemic, like 5 years ago. I don't know, went to school for photography. Always been kind of an artsy fart, I guess. That's about it.
Yeah. And what brought you to North Carolina from Texas?
My wife's work, she's a wastewater engineer. She designs the treatment and the treatment facilities for like removing the detritus from water. So specifically now she does PFAS, PFOA, Chemical X, the forever chemicals and stuff. So she designs like the actual treatment process that removes all that stuff from the water. There are a lot of production plants and stuff in North Carolina that like got rid of the byproduct of their stuff into, drinking water, or into watersheds that leached into drinking water. So she helps clean the water up.
Yeah. And what was that transition like coming from Texas, which, we joke is like a whole other world, coming from there over to North Carolina?
Well, it was actually, we had a little layover in Texas. We had lived in Portland, Oregon for the same reason. My wife's work, she went up there and for 18 months, and the pandemic hit and we lived indoors for a majority of that time. So Portland, really beautiful city, loved it a lot, but we felt like moving here was probably the better opportunity. So we moved back to Texas and lived with my in-laws for like 3 months. Texas and North Carolina have a lot alike. North Carolina has seasons and color, which is amazing. Absolutely love it. And it gets cold at night. Doesn't get cold at night in Texas. It can be 110 during the day and then it cools off to like 95. The humidity here is like nothing I've ever experienced though.
Yeah.
But
where in Texas are you from originally? Where would you call like
I'm
home?
from Dallas.
Dallas.
I grew up in Dallas proper. None of the other like outside little cities or suburbs. And I went to school in Dallas and left when I was, 21, moved to Austin, and didn't have a whole lot of guidance about how to get into school or anything like that. So I ended up at a small liberal arts college on the south side of town in Austin called St. Ed's. They're the Hilltoppers. Yeah, so I got my photography degree there.
Nice. Yeah. Also small liberal arts school. We were the Warriors. But yeah, so a smaller college than even the high school I went to. So something in common there, which is nice. I appreciated the smaller, intimate classroom scene and like getting to know everybody. And we're both big sports fans, but it's fun to look at the big schools now and cheer for them, root for them. But I appreciated the small school experience.
Yeah, it was really nice. Even though I probably I didn't have the grades necessarily to get directly into Texas, UT. I really liked the small university feel. There were, obviously because there are fewer kids, you have way more access to the facilities. So when we're talking about trying to like book a dark room or a place to process your film and develop your film and then print your photos, or lab time for any of the digital work, like you're only having to push against maybe a couple hundred kids who are in your department versus like maybe several hundred kids and the larger university population. So it was nice.
Yeah, I did appreciate that. Getting to know the teachers well, getting to know other colleagues and students well. And so tell us a little bit about what was your kind of health and fitness background, like play sports? What was that like growing up into the college life? And then what life looked like after that?
I played a lot of sports when I was young. I did, just like the big 3, baseball, soccer, basketball. I didn't play football. I wanted to. I'm from Texas, but that was like a hard no. My dad played football when he was in high school. He was like a 3-sport letterman, basketball, football, and baseball. And he got knocked down. He got tackled and his cleats stayed planted. So he ripped like everything in his ankles. And my mom didn't want me to get hit in the head. So she was a bit ahead of her time on that. but I played a lot of baseball, loved baseball, played a lot of soccer, did a lot of taekwondo, got a black belt in taekwondo. Really wanted to pursue some of that stuff into high school, but it just kind of like faded away, and didn't really, I kind of went back and forth into taekwondo, and I always loved like getting out there doing pickup stuff with my friends, but
Mhm.
didn't really have anything structured until after college, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did the college and then even just after college years look like? Because I do think it's fascinating. Where most folks, if they're involved in a sport,
Yeah.
they start getting involved in fitness to improve and get better in their sport, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now what do I do if I'm not invested in a
Yeah.
sport, or now I'm getting out on my own? Like, how do I take care of myself? So what was that journey like for you?
My, at the time, girlfriend, now wife, was like, she was always athletic. We met in college and she went to UT. She's a third generation Longhorn. um, she would swim. She wasn't on the swim team, but she was taking like a swimming and diving extracurricular. She just loves to swim. She's always been really athletic and really, really into just maintaining a baseline level of fitness. I was not in college. I had definitely drifted way more into the art scene. And when we started dating after she graduated, this was 2007, I think. We moved back to Dallas temporarily, and we lived in a condominium that had a weight room. And she was just like, I am gonna, work out down here because we have this facility. It's free. You should come with me. And I was like, yeah, like I will, because I want to spend time with you. And that's pretty much like when they talk about like love languages and stuff. And my love language, I guess, is just like spending time with that person. So I would just go down there and like mess around. I remember trying to like, they had one of those cable machines with the leg press and just like trying to mess with it. It was absolutely terrible. It was like they had like four pieces of equipment. And then we moved back to back to Austin, and we lived in a different apartment, and they had a bigger gym, and we would go down there early in the morning and work out. And then after that, kind of, we moved into a house and joined like the Lifetime because it was the closest gym to us, and it had a pool, which is always looking for a place with a pool for her. And we would just go take classes and do that stuff, and I would go fiddle around with the weights and hide in the vast sea of machines. And that just kind of messed around, just kind of did that. Like, I feel like that was like 5, 6 years, just kind of not really doing anything. And then I started getting in, I saw like a Spartan race, and I was like, I could do that. Like,
Yeah.
that looks really fun. And started looking at alternatives to just sitting in the sea of machines. Like, they had, I think at the time, kind of workout of the day, like on the Spartan website, and you could go and you could do that stuff. And it was very like, oh man, I would say almost Greco-Roman, like not in the wrestling sense, but in the age. Like, it
Mm.
was like, throw this rock into the air. Like, and I remember being in the back, like picking up a heavy rock and like throwing it, doing these like core to extremity movements. I mean, I didn't know that's what it was, and really really starting to kind of look more into what was available to me, and that kind of moved on into picking up a barbell and doing like a traditional, like 5x5. And then my daughter was born, and I was like, this is cool, but it's kind of boring. Like, what can I do that keeps me interested? And I remember doing a CrossFit workout at the Lifetime, and I was like, I'm getting some looks. I should not join an affiliate. I should do this all in my gym, like at home in my garage.
Yeah.
And that's what I did for like 7 years.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I think it's always intriguing what gets people into fitness. And so for you, the idea of quality time, of just spending time with
Yeah.
significant other, enjoying that, and not necessarily looking for some sort of external thing of like, I'm looking
Right.
for a specific physique or this or that. And then you kind of morphed into some of the Spartan racing, and okay, this is fun. But then getting bored led you to this path of CrossFit. How did you stumble upon a CrossFit workout to do in Lifetime? Was it something like you found on the
Yeah.
internet, or it was just kind of like, let me try this thing? And
Yeah. So I found this workout program, and I don't even remember how I found it. I think the guy's still around. It's called garage gym athlete, I think. And he has everything broken down into 10-minute blocks essentially. And I just remember going to the gym and doing this workout, and it was like power cleans and like wall balls and something. At Lifetime at the time, they were kind of like, it was right before they had they now they have this alpha program, which is like CrossFit Light. But it was right before they did that. So nothing was like branded alpha, but I was in like one of the weight racks trying to do like power cleans and then moving over to this weird structure they had in the middle with a wall ball and just being like, this is not the right venue for me to be trying to do this. No, but like I don't even know how I found him. And it was some app
Mm.
and I downloaded it. It was
Well,
good. I used it for a couple of years.
yeah. What was the process like then of seeing what was programmed
Yeah.
and then trying to replicate that? Because it's one thing to come into an affiliate and have a coach try and help
Mhm.
you. It's another to
Yeah.
maybe see a video or just kind of look at it and then try and do it yourself. What was
Yeah.
that process like of working out in your own in your garage, of
Oh
seeing the
man.
movements and then trying to replicate them?
Well, a lot of what he did is what a lot of people still do. You know, there's YouTube video links. It was just like looking at stuff on YouTube and being like, okay, you know, I think I get this. And then I would kind of get a little deeper into it, you know, and be like, okay, well, if I do it this way, I can do it this way. And that's a little bit more efficient. That feels a little bit better for how I'm moving. Always personally been, when it comes to weights, like I think pretty conservative. Like I understand that if I do too much, it'll wreck me. Not that I haven't ever done that. I mean, I remember absolutely trying to snatch or clean like 135, like just for the hell of it in my garage and just being absolutely crushed. I mean, just like popped out from under the bar, just, you know, and nothing in my brain was like, oh, well, if I had eyes on me, this would be fine. It was, no, I have to learn how to do this myself. I've always been that way. I've always been, I'm going to learn how to do this myself and fail privately. So if I fail and I quit, like nobody can see it and I can just walk away. But at some point, you know, I had been doing that. My daughter was born and I was really like, started doing a lot of CrossFit just in my garage, 2 programs. Like primarily I did a lot of linchpin and I did a lot of old school Julie Fouché train, which was just great. It was actually a great program. And, you know, we moved to Oregon and I was working out in the driveway a lot and having a good time. But at some point, the weights got to a level and my body started feeling a certain way. I was like, I should probably just not be doing this by myself. You know, I
Mhm.
should be in a place where people can have eyes on me. Like I worked with a coach remotely. It's so weird that I did that before joining an affiliate. Like that's how like how much like in my brain I was about failing privately, like the need for it, you know, not to have eyes on me. But, you know, and did things with that coach on good terms. Super, super cool dude. Um, was like, I just need to go to an affiliate,
Yeah.
you know.
So that was your first affiliate experience and was in Oregon.
Oh,
Finding somewhere?
it was here
Was it
actually.
here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we moved here and I
Yeah.
was working with that coach.
Yeah.
And it was yeah, it was here. It was up the street a
Yep.
couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's funny because then when we started this thing in the garage 3 years ago, you know, we created a website and an Instagram, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden I remember you reaching out,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Is he serious? Like he wants to come work out in the garage with us? Like I don't even know
I
how he
had no
found out
idea it was a
about us."
garage.
I know. I was like, we did a good job of kind of masking it. All of a sudden
Yeah,
you
yeah.
show up like, "Wait, is this the right place?"
Yeah.
But yeah. So what led you then to on finding like an affiliate, but then
Sure.
starting to come through that process? What was that like?
So I looked, you know, I even though I wasn't in an affiliate, I was into CrossFit.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
You're pretty knowledgeable.
for like 7 years.
Yeah,
Like into CrossFit.
yeah.
And I was watching the games and reading all the stuff and learning about it because I feel like at some point in my life, I got to this point where I was like, there's a difference between knowing something and understanding something. And I really am, for a lot of things, driven to understand. I need to know the why. I need to just not be like, sure, I want a progression. I want to know what purpose this specific thing serves. I want to know why we're doing this. And then I want to know, like, the blueprint or the foundation behind it. So I read a lot about CrossFit, read a lot about theory, or I had downloaded the level 1 manual like when I lived in Oregon and had like been reading it, you know. I had been thinking about coaching for off and on. Like I remember the first time I talked about it like out loud was in Oregon, you know. So I had been thinking about coaching for a long time just because I was like really into it, you know. And I decided I needed to join an affiliate. Like obviously if you want to like coach people, you need to join an affiliate. You need to have experience like being around people. You can't just like be like, hey, look at me. And so I, knew about like the affiliate finder, the affiliate map on the main site, and went to 3 or 4, like, nearby, and this was before Greater Culture, because I remember finding the old gym and you guys were, like, on the webpage, and I was like, "Oh, this is an interesting gym," but it's far, and 15 minutes is so far now, right? Everything here is so compact. So I, joined that gym, and it was pretty good, but, like, my mind being the way that my mind is, I wanted to understand more about the programming
Mhm.
and started really thinking about programming and wanting to understand the nuances and the logic behind why people were doing things. And like, I knew that, I understood like the modalities and how things like that work, but I really wanted to just have more,
Yeah.
more information forever.
Yeah, and then along the way, the opportunity came up to go get your L1, and you'd
Yeah.
expressed an interest in coaching, and so we were really excited about that. So what was that process like of going from consuming all the information, taking the L1, and now trying to put some of that into practice in front of a group of people
Oh
who are
man.
staring at you?
Yeah, and it was even weirder because these were people I was like an athlete with,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And like starting in the garage and moving into the facility and it being like I've like been shoulder to shoulder with these people and they see me like totally bonk workouts and totally like just do the thing wrong. I mean, I feel like if there was an award for doing a workout wrong, I just do workouts wrong. I'll do the wrong movement or I'll do the wrong rep range, you know? And I was like, and now these people are supposed to like take what I'm saying with authority?
Yeah.
Like, okay. So that was pretty nerve wracking. You guys did a good job of letting me shadow and doing the pieces of the class. And then you'd kind of repeat it. And then you do like kind of a full class, but not like, on your own. You didn't like
Mhm.
kick me out of the nest, which I really appreciated. But it was certainly, I was thinking about that this morning actually. It was certainly like pretty wild. I definitely, for months, was always a little like, I still get a little like,
There's that imposter syndrome,
yeah, oh,
especially when you're
for
like,
sure.
yeah. And then along the way now, so you've been at it for, I'd say, over 2 years.
About that, yeah.
L1, L2, consistently coaching. What are some of the lessons maybe you've learned over those couple years
Yeah.
in like advancing your knowledge and like taking information and then trying to apply it in a class setting and what that's looked like?
I consume so much media, like, and I just, went back to, well, Plano, not Dallas, but I went back to Texas
Hmm.
for Thanksgiving. I dropped into a gym. I try to always drop into gyms because you learn something regardless of whether or not you find it beneficial.
Hmm.
Even if you don't think it's beneficial, then you find a way. You definitely learn things that you don't want to do, and that's beneficial. So I just really don't think there's a negative behind that. It's always worthwhile to go to other gyms,
Yeah.
even if you have better experiences at some than others. I just read a lot about CrossFit and watch a lot of videos and from so many different sources. There are so many different points of view about how to do things. And you just kind of like, it's like coaching cues. You just kind of find a couple that seem to work and you stick with those. But if one stops working, like you need to find something new. So I have like on my YouTube, on my Instagram, I have like folders. You can like save
Hmm.
the reels and stuff. I have folders for like all the movements.
Yeah.
And if I find a cue or something like that or a progression that I like, I save it to that folder. And then I have like this Apple Notes, and I have just an extensive Apple Notes that has several different folders, and one of those folders is my timeline folder. So I always do a timeline, but I have a progressions and a warm up folder, and then under that folder I have dozens of warm ups and progressions. And one thing that helps me do is when I'm making that timeline, it helps me like with the efficiency of my workflow. So I can look at what the workout is and I can be like, oh, I need this. I can copy and paste it, but then I can make modifications according to the day. But it just saves me a lot of typing time because I'm a terrible typist. And I just am trying always to kind of tweak things a little bit and modify things to make it not boring.
Yeah, just thinking through some of those lessons of like taking the information, creating timelines, creating progressions, keeping things new and innovative, continually trying to just make the class as effective as possible.
Yeah, and my big problem that I had to overcome originally was I felt like I needed to reinvent the wheel, like every class. I felt like I needed to do something that was new and like wholly original. Everything had to be specific, and I'm like, no, like you can have a good general warm up. You can have a good cycle of movements that are effective and your athletes know, but then you can also pepper in things that are different, bring in things that are obviously specific to the workout, but then you can also bring in maybe just a tweak a little thing that is kind of new and unexpected. And I, talk a lot. So I'm always up for like education. I love like throwing out a piece of information so that people can be like,
Yeah.
yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I know I appreciate, and I know a lot of others do as well about your classes is connecting some of the whys of like, hey, look at how these 2 or 3 movements have a very similar pattern or shape we're trying to create or what we're trying to accomplish here. And it's like that makes sense why we're doing this on the floor. Now let's do it on the rig. Now let's do it on the wall. So I think that's always really helpful. And I do agree, especially when you're first starting off as a coach, you're like, well, I want to wow the group and like do something really cool. And then you start coaching a good amount of classes, and sooner or later you're like, I just can't keep coming up with something different.
I just can't keep doing the same. Like I can't keep doing new things.
Right. And then you realize like, okay, there is benefit to consistency, knowing what to expect, certain progressions, and we just keep refining and tweaking. And so as someone who loves to consume information, what are some of the things that you're excited to continue to develop or build on as a coach?
Oh man. So I'm studying for my L3. You have to hit the like class threshold
It's a lot.
for that.
Yeah.
It's a lot, but I'm close.
Yeah. 750 hours.
Yeah. So I'm just like reading all these old CrossFit journal articles, which is really cool. It's also really interesting because you read about all these things that people are talking about now like it's new. And people, either Glassman or like the kind of cadre of OG CrossFitters were writing about it 20 years ago, And it's really interesting to come across like an article that is all about like shoulder impingement and, it's written by Mark Ripito and you're like, okay, like, and it's, you can hear it like his voice when you read it. There's just so much knowledge and there's so much information and most of it still holds up, because a lot of it was based on science, so you can read it today and you're like, yeah, this is still totally applicable. One thing that about science and physiology, all those subgenres, they change with time. The more that we learn about things, the more that stuff is liable to change, which, I find that I've always really liked about CrossFit, and some of the vocal proponents of CrossFit are like, hey, this isn't what we thought it used to be, and we have no problem shifting, It's fluid, like, what CrossFit should be. CrossFit isn't like all the movements that you see in a competition. It's tons of things, So going back and seeing them like talk about doing, oh man, what was it like? I was listening to the Very Not Random podcast and they were like one of the old workouts, but just what is it? Which one's 30 power cleans for time?
Oh, like a clean and jerk, like Grace?
Yeah, Grace. Like being like, originally it was like no time cap.
Right.
Just do it and here's the weight. And if it takes you an hour, it takes you an hour. I mean, you can't really do that today in an affiliate setting.
Yeah.
And I probably wouldn't recommend it if you've never picked up a barbell. But just the idea that you figured it out and your time just got better, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. You
Um,
saw the progression.
yeah, there's just there's so much.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the fun part about coaching and developing is it's like sometimes it's going back and reading some old material and being
Yeah,
like, hey, let's bring this back. Sometimes it's
yeah.
learning new things. So there's always a way to improve and develop. And as a coach now and having been at it for a while, when you think about the class experience, you've been in the gym as a member, you're leading folks through the class experience. What's something that you hope athletes would either feel or experience having taken a
Oh,
class from
man.
you?
I hope they're entertained.
That is, I think that's a definite yes.
Yeah,
I
I
love like
mean
that you bring people along for like the stories of your life of like what's going on.
that might
And I think there's a
sometimes that
connection
might
that
be too
develops
much.
there.
Yeah, you know, I try not to complain too much, but I try to be pretty candid, because I mean, it's my job, but it's also a large part of my life, and people to understand that even though I'm standing up in front of them, like leading a workout or telling them what to do, like, I have my own stuff.
Mhm.
We all have our own stuff, and if I can impart some wisdom or make you know, somebody feel a little lighter through some, dumb dad joke, then, I feel like my job's pretty well done as long as we're moving safely.
Yeah, I would 100% say that that is felt and that it's reciprocated of,
Yeah.
we appreciate the stories and bring us along for the ride. So the quick hitters then, so usually we ask folks like favorite, least favorite movements to do, but I'm going to ask you from a coach's
Oh,
perspective. So like,
sure.
what would you say is one of your favorite movements or things to coach when you see a program, you're like, I get excited about this.
Oh, man, we were talking about cleans. I love coaching cleans. I love just talking about like the nuance in the movement because everybody has something they can fix in the clean. And it always gives me a really good opportunity to really like hone in on the nuances of people's movement. I Every time I see it, I like to do it. I also am always trying to find a different way to warm up,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I feel like I've found a good one.
Yeah. And then so we'll flip it. A movement for you that is either your least favorite to coach or is like the one that gives you the most grief or challenge.
Oh man, it's the overhead squat for
Mhm.
sure. And that was the movement that I had to coach at my L2 for the breakouts.
Oh,
So I still am like, it's just because it exposes everything. And you're looking at, people's like line of action, you're looking at their midline, you're looking at their overhead mobility and everything that is encompassed with just a regular squat too. So I'm just always like, why don't we just get the PVCs out and we can run through this a little bit. I can see you guys like stand up with the PVC overhead and then squat with the PVC, and I can walk around a little bit and make sure people's positions are good before we start adding weight. I
yeah.
always get a little tense for that one.
Yeah, I would say that one is probably one of the more demanding
Yeah,
movements on an athlete, mobility wise, strength wise, balance wise. So it's
yeah,
a great
absolutely.
movement, but a challenging one. The last question for you is when you start to think about, people who maybe are timid or a little bit concerned about coming into an affiliate or
Oh
coming into a
yeah.
gym, having been a member, still being a member, having now been a coach, what's some information or something that you might share with somebody who's like, I kind of am interested in improving my fitness, but I'm also intimidated about what goes on in the gym there. Anything that you might share with somebody like that?
Yeah. Affiliates are not like your Globo gym. I think of affiliates as like safe spaces. Everyone who has come into an affiliate has failed at some point or another. There's like absolutely nothing that anybody who's new to CrossFit is going to come into an affiliate and be the first person to have ever failed at X. I was practicing handstands and got my foot wrapped up in a band and cut my shin open on a J cup. Like, I mean, it happens. So we've had some athletes here who have not always, but who have been timid. And one thing I try to reiterate to people who have a little bit of that hesitation is that, I mean, especially me, like I'm terrible. I fall down all the time just walking to my car. Like I have done everything that you think that you could have done. And so have a lot of other people. And because of those failures, it's one of the unique aspects. People will always tell you, oh, I've done that. Oh, this is what I did to fix it. So you have kind of that. Not only people talk a lot about the shared suffering, but there's also the shared failure. And people continue to desire to improve and progress beyond that, you know. I always just think affiliates really I wish I'd joined one earlier and gotten over, my own. hangups about it because there isn't a better place, really.
Yeah, it's really like an adult playground where you get to
Yeah,
come in here, practice, learn, try some new things, make some improvements, also showcase some areas where there's some development, and
yeah,
along the way, you get the support of people who
yeah,
can kind of create as safe of an environment as possible to try those things
for
and see
sure.
what happens. And
Yeah.
if it fails, okay, we learned it. Now we just
We learned it,
yeah,
and now we know one thing not to do.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, John, this has been super fun
Yeah,
getting to learn a little bit more about your story. We're grateful for you finding us a couple of years ago and then
yeah,
developing into a coach who helps out with our afternoon and morning classes here. So,
absolutely.
if you're someone who's out there looking for a coach to help you in that 9 a.m. and noon time slot, you come over to our gym. You're going to see John
Yeah,
a lot for those time slots. So we're grateful for you and excited to see what you can continue to do here.
thanks, man. Appreciate it.